In my last video, Volunteering Done Wrong, I outlined why I believe modern volunteering is actually damaging to our children. Most importantly, I outlined what I believe to be what form that damage takes and how it persists deep into their adult lives. In this video, I'm going to discuss the way volunteering should be done. I do believe volunteering is an important and meaningful part of the development of our children, if done correctly and for the right reasons. Did my son volunteer? Yes. But the volunteering activities he engaged in were managed by me to be as burdensome and irritating as possible. I tried to make sure that when he volunteered, it was not based on finding time in his schedule, but rather missing out on something else he wanted to do. I tried to make him understand that volunteering was a sacrifice for someone else, not a resume builder for him. One of the last volunteering activities he did after graduating from high school, before leaving for college, was, I guess, the best and the worst in a sense. That last summer, he volunteered as a counselor at a camp for kids with limb deficiencies. He spent a week at a sleepaway camp helping kids with missing arms or legs, in some cases missing both. My son, an incredibly strong endurance athlete, had to deal with the fact that virtually none of those kids would ever be able to participate in the activities that are the joy of his life. I believe he came to realize and appreciate how fortunate and lucky he is for what he has, for what he is capable of doing. Now, one of his many responsibilities that week was to help these youngsters in the bathroom. So I'll spell it out for you. Someone with no arms is unable to wipe themselves. My son, a 17-year-old boy, had to do it for him in the bathroom. Now, how many young people do you know would step up like that when called upon? Was it a significant sacrifice? No. But it was a big step in the right direction towards recognizing that sometimes serving others is uncomfortable and challenging, but necessary. My son sacrificed a week of his time before leaving for his first year of college at a sleepaway camp, trying to help bring some joy and fun to a group of kids that, through no fault of their own, lived a difficult and challenging life. Wiping someone's backside is a small sacrifice compared to the challenges those kids faced every day of their lives. As I stated in my first video on this topic, Volunteering Done Wrong, I'm only talking about volunteering for high schoolers and younger. Let me explain why volunteering for an adult versus a child is a very different thing. The time sacrifice that every adult has to make to volunteer, it doesn't really exist for kids. I realize that many kids have full schedules, but that's self-inflicted to serve themselves. A kid's schedule is filled with the activities they enjoy, sports, music, theater, clubs, the necessity to study for school. Kids are busy doing things they want to do, as opposed to the adult who is busy handling the many responsibilities that come with living an adult life. An adult's time is spent working, shopping, cooking, doing laundry, balancing a checkbook, etc., etc. Now, I don't believe a child is truly making a time sacrifice when they volunteer. If volunteering is about sacrifice, where is the sacrifice for a child? Not buying this argument? Well, tell your son or daughter to tell their coach, it doesn't matter what sport, that they have to miss the next game because of volunteering. You want to bet what happens? Not only will your son or daughter jump up and down in anger that they'll have to miss a game, but the coach will likely punish your child with less playing time in the following game. Modern volunteering is supposed to be a meaningful and important priority for kids, right? Modern volunteering generally only occurs when it's convenient and easy. I gave you the purpose of volunteering for kids previously, the act of giving of your time for free to a worthy cause in order to develop characteristics like compassion, empathy, patience, and altruism to benefit another at your own expense. Do you believe that volunteering taking place today accomplishes any of that for your child? Worse, as I stated in my previous video, today's volunteering is setting up young adults for failure and frustration in the workplace by giving them an unrealistic belief in what their work life will look like. Do some research of your own regarding the millennial and Gen Z generations and the myriad of mental health challenges they're dealing with in their work lives. I've mentioned this before. Please spend a little time and look into that. Without ever experiencing the challenges, frustrations, hardships, and misery, yes, even misery at times, of a real job in high school, you are likely condemning your son or daughter to a work life of frustration and disillusionment that they'll have to figure out how to deal with. I love volunteering, and I recognize the importance of it in developing your ICD adult. Hopefully, I've made it clear by now why I despise the way in which volunteering has been turned into an industry to the detriment of our youth. Here are some suggestions how I encourage my son to volunteer and to choose what type of volunteering he participated in. In order for your child to reap the benefits of volunteering, I suggest the following. Make sure your child is truly sacrificing in some way. Make sure there's some inconvenience to your child when volunteering. Encourage your child to give back by sharing the skills they've developed. And finally, make sure your child realizes that there are others that are much worse off, and a helping hand is often the only hand some of these people will ever receive. The only real thank you in volunteering is the sense of internal well-being you get from doing it. Don't volunteer for external thank yous. Sacrifice needs to exist for your child's volunteering to be developmental. One of the many benefits of doing something nice for someone less fortunate is that you are establishing the building blocks of living an ICD life. Developmental volunteering is part and parcel of raising an independent, confident, good decision maker. The doing something nice part is just one building block towards that development. Figure out some way to make your child sacrifice something. It could be the time or where the volunteering takes place. It could be in the act itself, something that your son and daughter finds to be very uncomfortable. There's that learning to be comfortable with being uncomfortable again, which is so important in developing your ICD adult. Make sure sacrifice is part of the act, or the essence of volunteering is lost. Inconvenience is closely related to sacrifice. The time, the place, or the act itself needs to be inconvenient. Your daughter hates to get up early on weekends? Perfect. Schedule her for volunteering for 6 a.m. across town on Saturday morning. You'll likely be the one that needs to drive her there. That's your parental sacrifice to help your child learn about sacrifice. If you're not willing to sacrifice anything, how are you going to teach it to them? Remember, set a good example and don't be a hypocrite. That's a reference to one of my previous videos I hope you watched. Your son or daughter may have developed a specific set of skills by this time in their life. My son was big into biking and eventually worked as a mechanic in a bike shop in his during his high school years. Some of his volunteering, including working as a volunteer bike mechanic en route for a local hospital's bike ride fundraiser. Did he want to spend a Saturday sitting on the side of the road waiting to help someone? Not really. But when he did get to help someone, it was clear to me that he felt good about it. Maybe your child paints, sketches, or draws. Why don't you find a local nursing home or children's hospital, have him or her sketch some of the residents, then give them the sketches. Maybe they could go and take some pictures of some of the residents and then turn those pictures into unique drawings or paintings. Is your child sports-centric? Look into volunteering as a youth coach, assistant coach, or referee at a local YMCA. Not only is this giving back to the community, it will force your son or daughter to learn the rules of their sports. Coaches and referees ought to know the rules of their sport backward and forwards. But really, that's just the tip of the iceberg for the potential benefits if your child takes on the role of a coach or a referee. Everything about coaching and being a referee has developmental potential for young kids. I could do an entire video on it for kids and hopefully will in the future. My son was actually an ice hockey referee at the ripe old age of 10 years old. He was the youngest referee in the state of Georgia at the time. It's a great story, and I'll talk about it down the road in another video. I'm sure I could come up with many more possibilities, but I'm hoping you've gotten the point. Whatever your child enjoys doing, see if you can help turn that into a volunteering opportunity. Consider how much more meaningful and developmental it will be for your child to take their, say, love of soccer and coach a team at the local YMCA, or refereeing games on a Saturday, taking their time to teach the sport to a younger generation. That's how parents wanting to develop an ICD adult think. Always keep your child's uniqueness in mind. My son helping an armless kid in the bathroom may be too much for your child, or it may be something they feel passionate about doing. Helping the less fortunate, the challenged. In my opinion, it's always a positive thing to show your child that there are so many in the world that are less fortunate than they are. Helping your kid understand that being less fortunate takes many forms, though. I'm not necessarily talking about rich and poor here. I'm talking about less fortunate. My son knew several kids, wealthy kids, whose dads were never around because of some big shot job and whose moms spent way too much time staring at the bottom of a wine glass. Other kids may not have had the money of the rich kid, but often those other kids had a mom or dad who was always there for them and did so many of the things that really matter to a child, simply being there. Now, none of that's volunteering, but what I'm trying to highlight is the recognition of what you have compared to what others may not have. That's a big part of the reason we encourage our kids to volunteer. Put sacrifice aside for a second. Part of volunteering is recognizing what we have that others don't, and deciding what others we would like to help if we can. Encouraging my son to be a camp counselor at Camp Limitations was a fantastic way, an in-your-face kind of way, for him to recognize that what he has and what some others do not. Some of those limb-challenged kids came from very wealthy families. They may have been a whole lot richer, money-wise, than my son, but they were definitely less fortunate in other ways. A part of ICD parenting is about helping your children learn to make good decisions. Deciding what type of volunteering activity your child will participate in is a great way to help them learn that making good decisions can be both beneficial to them as well as to others. Good volunteering, as opposed to modern volunteering, helps define your child, helps them define themselves. It helps shape them into the adult you want them to be, an ICD adult. Now, I understand that most food banks, let's say, rely on volunteers to put together packages for the needy. It's important, and there will always be people ready and willing to help with those tasks. However, consider the developmental impact on your child volunteering at a facility that cares for, let's say, terminally ill children, rather than spending a few hours putting items in a box. You want your son or daughter to learn that they're not actually the center of the universe. Have them be a big brother or big sister to a little kid that comes from an environment that tries to convince the child that he or she has no future. Yes, some of us start life at ground zero. Others start out standing in a hole 10 feet deep. The lucky ones start standing out on a platform 10 feet off the ground. But here's the thing. Where you start doesn't have to define you. Where you start doesn't have to define you. You can find so many examples of outrageously successful people who started from the worst of circumstances. Many of those same people will gladly tell you that their unfortunate beginnings were what gave them the strength to succeed. In many ways, it's the struggle for success, however you define success, that makes someone really appreciate what they have versus the person that had so much of what they have just because it was handed to them. Volunteering can help your child realize that there's almost always someone worse off than they are, and help give them the strength of mind, the strength of body, and the strength of spirit to build themselves as they help build others. That's why volunteering matters. That's the value of old school volunteering, when volunteering meant something more than checking a box on a college application, or worse, competing with others to see who can volunteer more. Raising an independent, confident, good decision maker. If you do that, you'll end up with an adult that respects what they have, appreciates what they have, and is more willing to share what they have with those that need a helping hand. Thanks for listening.